Too often, organizations think it's all about the individual team. But the challenge is getting alignment from leadership.
That scares a lot of leaders. They got to where they are, climbing up the ladders of the structure that you're telling them that they got to tear down.
We're asking people not to just execute a framework. We're asking people to work in a new way that doesn't give them the same securities that they have in the old way of working.
Shiva says, burn down your father's house and build a new one. Find the guys that believe that in a company and you can do it.
Within Project Scagile, we basically interviewed dozens of experts on how do you scale Agile the right way? How do you transform into an Agile organization? And what's really interesting is that the word we heard most often is executive team, is leadership team. We got the first really interesting hint and thought on how you prepare and align the leadership team from Eric O'Brien.
I'm about to say something that leaders don't like. It's the idea of forming a coalition of leaders. And the most important thing to do here is, I like to call it moving away from leadership buy-in to leadership participation. This is the idea that the way you make this work is that, hey, if we're going to go to this future state, and these are the leaders that are going to be involved in making this happen, that their participation is now required.
Generally, you talk about local decision-making. Many people think, local decision-making means that the development teams can make decisions themselves. But if you abstract this principle of local decision-making, it just means that you put the problem where the solution is, or the solution where the problem is. If the team has a problem identified, they should be able to come up with a solution. But also, if there's a problem with the working conditions, which is a task for the management team, they should also have the problem with the working conditions.
What does that mean? That they are now servant leaders. That means if you're a leader of, let's say, DevOps, and we need all this technology built in, you as a leader now, you're not just buying in and saying, oh, that's a good idea, let's go do DevOps. No, you're going to make it happen. You're going to participate now. You're a servant leader. You're going to do what we call aggressive impediment removal. You're going to remove the roadblocks as quickly as possible, because by having that ownership, and this means that having the C-suite aligned to that as well, this becomes not just a, okay, well, we're just doing this as a corporate initiative. It becomes as a, hey, I'm responsible for the people below me and empowering them to be successful.
We had an experience in a group. They had a coach at their leadership level, because a lot of times you'll bring people in to help more at the program level or even in the team level. But the person that we brought in was really coaching that executive level. And we could see from the very start, when they were kicking off this transformation, that they had the leadership support. They had leadership support in the tooling. They had leadership support in reorganizing the teams. As a result, they were able to launch 4 or 5 release trains in a year, which is really great. And then they were able to really extend that to the portfolio level. He was a coach for the business and the technology side, right? So he was really helping link them together, compared to another transformation we had where it was mostly on the technology side. And as that group tried to scale it up, the decisions being made at the leadership level were still reinforcing silos. So for example, you might have a digital team. And while digital kind of wants to operate as their own train, in reality, if you have a digital team that's touching all of those websites, those front ends, the value doesn't stay within that website, right? That's just the first point of your contact with your customer. You're going to need the middleware, the back-end systems, the security systems. You're going to need all of that to really make a change to deliver value to your customers.
One of the coaches I work with, she does the Patrick Lencioni applied to functions of a team before she does any transformation with the executive leadership team, just to tackle that first and foremost, because she knows that leadership team is not functioning as a team, doesn't have that trust that the transformation is not going to be successful.
The effective facilitation side of this is so important. Clearly, you're going to be in trouble if you schedule even a 1-hour meeting with the leadership team and the meeting just is basically a failure.
The basic idea of Project Scagile is to view agile transformations from the practitioner's perspective. So we basically interviewed dozens of experts, of practitioners on what are the biggest challenges in scaling agile. And based on the results and patterns we found, we basically built a map that everyone understands. The sailboat retro. What has the biggest potential to put wind into the sails of your agile transformation? What rocks, what dangers are there that you have to be aware of when scaling agile? To just name a few results, we're talking about how do you transform cultures? How do you change people? How do you really organize around value? And on the other hand, we're talking about how do you align horizontally if you have many teams and trains? Or we are talking about agile metrics, which offer huge potential done the right way. And building on all of these interviews and experiences, we developed webinars, online courses, or ebooks that are basically publicly available for free.
What you don't want is to have a leadership team that does not understand the problems of the developers. My recommendation is let the leadership team jump through the same hoops as all the developers have to. Make them work as an agile team.
Is to put them into their own mini agile, mini Kanban team, making sure that they are practicing what you're trying to preach.
Just because they're not coding doesn't mean that they can have time-boxed meetings, retrospectives, track their work in progress, and so on.
Take a look at the leadership team and say, okay, I'm the change agent, so I'm going to be the Scrum Master. The product owner will be our CEO. Assign agile team roles to these people so that they begin to practice what they preach.
Having them follow the same principles, live up to the same standards, will help them understand the problems of interference, for example, or the company restrictions on agile.
There's a number of best practices that teams should start when they're looking at aligning for scaling their agile practices. The first thing is make sure you have a common goal and a common mission. It sounds simple, but I have walked into an organization and I've asked the person that I report to, what is your goal for Agile? And she told me one thing. I asked her boss and he told me something else. I asked his boss, he told me something else, and I asked a fourth level of management and they all gave me different answers.
Do we have the same understanding of product vision and goals, right? I mean, that sounds obvious, but it's kind of shocking how often teams don't actually have that understanding, or even worse, you'll talk to members of the same team and they won't even have the same answers.
One of the things I like to do here is that I like to use Steve Jobs' model here. The idea that you get all your leaders together, you pick the top 10 items, and what you do is you slash the bottom 7. And you say, we're going to focus on this. So that requires that C-suite to say, focus on these and do whatever you can to be a servant leader to the people to support that initiative. Companies take these scaling frameworks and they just go at them and they go, okay, I got the framework, I got the path, execute the recipe card, and they're wondering, why aren't we winning in the market?
Many organizations focus on a buzzword, whether it's agile or lean or DevOps or safe or less or whatever it is. It can easily become the end rather than the means to the end.
I've been in a transformation that lasted 34 days.